what if? What if we did the opposite of what Tim did? But first, let's dress up properly, okay? Hi, this is Luise Heinzl. Oh my goodness, what happened here? Oh, this is magnetic. I know why I usually do this off camera, but it is what it is. I need this, especially today. I mean, this is my usual video outfit. Well, not for every video, but for most of my videos, and it has a reason, obviously. But today, this combination is very important because I want to try a technique Tim has shown in one of his last live streams, and I want to see and try out what happens if I do the opposite of what he did. I mean, that might end in a catastrophe, but it could also perhaps bring us to the conclusion that listening to people who show tutorials is very important, but that we at the same time can turn on our own brains and do something a little different and get something which is our own from this original technique. Do you know what I mean? And that is, yeah, basically what I'm trying here on my channel, to inspire you to do what I do here and then go a step further and turn it into your own. Yeah, and with going a step further, I mean including your own ideas and your own twist and so on. Do you know what I mean? So let's try something. First of all, junk journal medicine. Don't forget that. That is very important. Second of all, what we are going to need for this is a stencil, some sprays, some ink, and I have different inks here today. I will show you in a second why and explain what this is and why I have this here. A stamp set, some translucent texture paste, and, you know, things to apply the stuff. And obviously something where we can do the technique, yeah? So what I want to do is I want to do two things simultaneously. And that we don't get confused, I will do the following thing. I will write Tim here, and I will do what he did in his video on this card. And here I will do what I will do. Do you know what I mean? And I want to follow the steps he has shown in his live stream and then decide where I want to do like the opposite thing and also think about what the opposite thing could then be. Yeah. So what has he done? He has taken a stencil, this one here, and here I will not do the opposite thing because I think what he said in his video is really, really, really important for this technique and that you can get a nice result in the end. If I will get a nice result here, I have absolutely no idea. But if I follow his steps on this card, I know that I will get a nice result. And because the technique is fabulous. And but for that, we need a stencil which has the features he has told us in his video. And that is that you choose a stencil which has really big openings. It would not help to have something where you have a really, let me make an example, a really detailed and small pattern. So for example, a stencil like this would not work so well for this technique. So please choose something which has big openings, like this, for example, I think would also work, you know, where the plastic of the stencil is not so much like the openings. Do you know what I mean? He has used this stencil in his video, and so that's the reason why I used this here as well. I can't read this, but I know that this is the number 37. And the first thing he did was he has taken a watercolor paper. Oh, that is the first difference I do here. I have a really cheap watercolor paper here. He has used the Ranger watercolor cardstock, but I want to try what happens if we do this technique on a really cheap paper. So this is medium thick. I would say this is perhaps 300 GSM or so, but it's a really cheap paper. But I want to know what is going to happen when I do that here. So then he has placed the stencil here. I want to take this stamp set. If I'm not mistaken, this is the same stamp set he has used for his project as well, but I'm not 100, well, doch, I'm I'm sure he has used this as well, or perhaps he has mixed it. I'm not so sure. I know that he had this stamp on his card. And also, I think some of the others are here, which I can remember that he had that on his card, but it's not so important that it is this one, Eccentric CMS 448. But what you want to choose is a stamp set which has like tiny stamps where you can take them and then stamp through the stencil. I'm going to use Black Soot Archival ink because he has used black ink as well. And then I'm going to take this and I randomly stamp through this. He has also talked about using, for example, a background stamp and, you know, try to stamp with the whole thing through the stencil. And he said that that probably doesn't work so well, and I can totally agree because I have tried it on another project years ago. Well, a year ago or so, but that doesn't matter. When you take a background stamp and try to stamp the whole thing through here, then it's really hard to get a nice stamp impression into these circles, and that is what we want to get. And when you have these single stamps, then look here, it already turned out a little bit rough. Can you see here the stamp impression is not complete, and that's because you need to press the whole stamp. Look, this turned out way better, so that you get the full thing. And I think it's really helpful when we pay attention to that trick to take separate stamps. I already really like this. So here we started with a white piece of paper, and these areas here where the stenciling is, or the stamping is through the stencil, you know what I mean, there it's white, and it will stay white here until the very end. So what if we take the stencil and instead of having a white surface, why don't we take a color? So that is the first thing where I want to do the opposite of what he did. And for that, I want to try holy cow, why can't I speak? Probably the most risky color I have in this entire room here, which is Lumberjack Plaid Distress ink. Yeah. I'm going to take such a tool. I can already see that this color on this cheap paper comes out really weird. So when we have that, shall we throw some water on here for more interest? I mean, why not? So then let's carefully start to dry this without melting the stencil. Please do that carefully. Let's then take a paper towel to lift off the rest of the water, because I now want to stamp through this also, like here, in exactly the same way with the same stamps. But this needs to be dry, obviously, otherwise my archival ink would not stay on here. So for this side, I want to take another color of archival ink. I've chosen ground espresso instead of the black suit here. But I'm going to take the same stamp set. So what do we have to do next? We have to take this off because we have to do the next step there. To first do what Tim did. And for that I now need to clean my stencil, because otherwise I would get the red to this card here, and that is obviously not what I want. So here we go. Hopefully this is clean enough. This stencil is really loved, as you can see. So I'm really hoping that this will not transfer to my card here now. So let's then first do here what Tim did in his video. Can I use my iron Presley on here? So that this can't move. So then let's take some texture paste translucent and let's put that through the stencil. Okay, so then let's take this off. Oh no! The red transferred to my paste. Oh my goodness. There was just enough lumberjack plait on my stencil left to get this. Oh my goodness, look. Ah! But instead of freaking out, we are going to take this and clean this. So what Tim did in his video was he has let this dry. Yeah, so let's just do that. And then while that is drying, we can put this on here. In this case, I want to try to get it thicker than here, because I also want to try out something which came to my mind a second ago. I have these little beads here. I want to try if we can embed something like beads in the paste. Why am I doing this so stupidly? Let me first, this is really stupid what you do here, Luise. Just take this off first, because then the beads can't stick to the stencil, and here they will not stick. So let's use the stickiness of this to throw these on here, and if some will fall to the paper, that is not the problem. We can just let them roll off then. So then let's take this and let's see. Okay, this sticks already pretty well. Oh my goodness, I haven't expected that. That is good. So then Tim said, let this dry. And if you know me, then you know what will happen now, because I will now take my heat tool and I will heat this up, and I will overheat this. I know that is not everyone's taste. I like that, not only because it's faster that the paste dries, but also because of the effects I can get. To do this here, I will take this and put it out of my way so that I can't accidentally put my heat tool on there and dry that with the heat tool as well, because then we can't see the difference. Yeah, we need to do it there exactly like Tim did it in the video. Otherwise, this thing would make no sense. Here, I want to reach different things. First of all, I want that the paste bubbles up. so that the paste itself gets texture. The second reason why I heat this up is that I'm hoping that the beads get embedded into the paste better, because when the paste is bubbling up, you know, I'm hoping that, yeah, somehow the beads stick better to the paste. If that will really work, I have no idea. Do you know what? I just changed my mind. I will do it in the following way. Here, I already have overheated it, and we got the texture here already. And I can see that I don't like that so very extremely much. But what if we just let this area dry, air dry, and don't heat it up, so that we get a really flat thing here and we have the texture here? Then we can compare that later as well, if that makes a difference for the contrast here. Because I have the feeling with the texture, the stamp impression gets more blurry somehow. Sometimes I'm really asking myself, what am I doing to myself here with these experiments? But at the same time, I'm happy that I do this, because then I can see what looks like shh and what not. First of all, why the heck did the lumberjack plaid ink change its color so much? This looks nearly neon. On camera, it's even not so neon-like in reality. It's really, really extremely orange somehow. That looks absolutely weird. And another thing is that all of these come off. When I go over this, I mean, if I imagine that this was in my journal later as a journaling card or so, or a tag or whatever, and I would flip through the journal, then it would drive me absolutely crazy if these would fall off. So when I go over this, I can see it didn't work, that they stick to the paste. Here, where the paste is flat and without the bubbles, they come off. Here, it's surprisingly sturdy. And here, where I expected that they will stick even better, they come off completely. But what I also can see is, I will show you that in a second, these are somehow coated with golden stuff, but that comes off. They turned somehow silver now. I mean, now you can't see that so well anymore, but perhaps a little bit. Can you see some of them are silver? Because this coating came to my paste. I have silver dots on here. Yes, silver, not gold. Really, really weird. But at the same time, I think that is a cool effect, and we can then reuse these, because they are like they were before, except that they lost the coating, but they are not sticky or something. There's no paste left on the beads, but look what that did. Can you see that? Before I go on, I want to prepare something to have another thing which would be the opposite of what Tim did. That just came to my mind when I saw what happened to the color of the ink and when I saw what happened with the beads. So what I have here is, I have a third piece of paper, which is the same material, the same size, and you know, everything is the same. I will quickly take the stencil again, put that on here, and do nearly exactly the same like here. I will first stencil through this again with my lumberjack plaid ink, but then I will take black archival ink like Tim has used instead of brown, because I want to see if a darker ink and a more juicy ink pad can give a better contrast on the red. And then when I have that, I want to try something which is even more opposite than this compared to that. Does that make sense? What happens if we take this and try to rescue this somehow by stamping on the paste? Yeah, if it didn't work so well, like here, just try to stamp on the paste, and because of the height of the paste, it doesn't happen so easily that you get ink to the background. It's really, it works. It's really easy to get the stamping just to the stenciled areas, because you know that was the initial idea. Tim has taken some spray stains next, and he has sprayed that over here. This is Uncharted Mariner. This is Peacock Feathers, and these are all the spray stains. No oxide spray involved. Fossilized amber. Seriously? Oh my goodness. It was also yellow, what he had in his video, where nothing came out, or nearly nothing. What is that? This is crushed olive. And this is crackling campfire. Since I don't like these speckly areas there, I will mist it with a little bit of water just to make the ink flow a little bit. I can already see that this cheap paper is terrible. So what he then did surprised me, because he has taken a paper towel while this was wet. Hopefully I'm not mistaken. And he has put that over there. Oh yes, it works. Why shouldn't it? He has done it. Why shouldn't it work? To lift the ink off from these areas here where the texture paste is. I will quickly dry this a little bit, because I'm assuming that because of this cheap paper, this is reacting a little different than what he had. But what this does is the texture paste gives us a resist, and because of that we can remove the ink from the paste. So we are going to take another paper towel now, make that a little bit wet to be able to take the rest of this ink off from the paste. And with that, these circles get completely white again. This looks so cool. It's absolutely fantastic. Okay, so then, this is also nice. What Tim did here is he used, you know, some rainbow colors. I haven't used exactly the same colors like he did in his video, but comparable, yeah, as colorful as he did. It also. And the opposite thing I want to do here on my side now is to use more neutral colors. And he said we shall use the spray stains. So I want to use oxide spray and spray stain on here to see what happens. I have chosen these colors, ground espresso and scorched timber, spray stain and oxide spray. So let's start with scorched timber. Ooh. Oh no, oh no. Holy shit, I'm so sorry. Wait. Let's put this over here. Let's then add a little bit of ground espresso, also the spray stain. And then let's go on with the oxide sprays of both of these colors. This is scorched timber, and I will put that here and here, so that we have the spray stain in the middle and the oxide spray there in the corners. And this is ground espresso. Then I do the same thing here. Little bit of water to make sure that the ink can move. Take another paper towel, make this wet. And now when we try to remove this, this should be different to the other one, because we have overheated the paste, and it should happen that we rub this ink into the texture. Nope, not really. I thought that would happen, but it doesn't happen. Okay, so that is surprising to me. It is not a big difference, because first I thought this could cause some problems, because if here would happen what I thought, that you go over this and then rub the ink into the texture, it would not dry there. And that, because you know the texture paste is like plastic and the sprays are not made to dry on there, and I thought that could cause problems because of the texture, and then that is in there, and perhaps when you then touch it with your finger or flip a page when this is in a journal, then it could transfer to your finger or the other page. But it doesn't happen. It comes off completely like on the other one, and that makes me really happy. It's absolutely fantastic. These darker areas you see here is just from my stamping, which I did before, but the ink and the oxide ink is completely removed. Absolutely fantastic. The paper towel got into these little areas and into these little slots of the texture, and because of that we could get it removed completely. And I really like that, because that way you have the texture and this bam color we got here, even if Lumberjack Plaid changed its color completely while we did this. But that doesn't matter. We can take another color the next time if we don't like this. But I have to say, this orangey color with the brown, that is really nice. And this gives us the chance to try something even more opposite than what we did on here compared to this. So what I want to do is wait a second. Give me a second to think about this. Can that work? Because look, I saw that a few seconds ago. Look, can you see this white line there? And here. And that is also here you can see it a little bit better. That is, why is that? That is because the texture paste is a little bit offset to the stenciled pattern, right? Yes. Yes. So that means, what does that mean? Oh my goodness, my brain. That means that we can try two different things at the same time. First, let's try, and for that I need something, a stencil which is really tiny. With tiny, not the stencil itself, but the pattern. For example, this one. This has the number THS 006. I will now put this mainly to this area here. So, you know, here is more space on the brown. Than compared to in between of these circles, but I will also put a little bit in between of the circles, but pretty irregular. Can you see that? So now I'm carefully going to dry this. I don't know how well you can see that in the camera, but yeah, oh, it's pretty visible. It's also a little bit orange. But this will change in a second. What if we now take this, and that is the second idea. So meaning this here, adding an additional resist with another stencil was the first idea which came to my mind. I want to try to take this and place this offset here because of what I saw here with these little areas there. This white. If this works, only half, you know, good as I have it in my mind then. So then I want to put this through here. And then do something which is also opposite to what Tim did, and also even opposite to what I did on the other card. So what I then want to do differently than on this one is I want to spray my spray now instead of drying the paste first. Yes. So let's go with ground espresso, Scotch timber, and then Scotch timber oxide spray, and ground espresso oxide spray, basically the same like we did on the other card. Where's my water? And now I want to try to start drying this. And yes, I know everything is on the paste now, and I think it's very dangerous to dry this completely now. I don't want that. Because if I would dry, if I would dry it completely, then the spray would probably get embedded in the paste. And that's not what I want. It turns purple. What the heck? Ouch. Okay, I think I need to do that step by step and then see what what is possible and what not. Because I'm afraid that I will embed the whole spray into the paste now, and that is not what I want, because then I would have lost my pattern underneath and this resist effect. So what we are going to do is we are first going to remove this mess. We are going to try to take a paper towel, make that wet, Okay, what is happening here? Oh, wait, I will zoom in a little bit. Because obviously I can't put a wet paper towel to the paste. Well, wait, let's do that step by step. Here I have the feeling I have already this skin of the paste. Oh my goodness, look at that. Oh. Aha. Yeah. Okay, don't dry that completely. Just a little bit, because then you get something like this. This is already too dry, obviously. And here, how can I get rid of this slime without ruining the whole thing? Okay, now I have to think really carefully. This could become a masterpiece. Here it's dry, here it's not dry. So what I'm going to try is I will make my paper towel pretty wet. Press on here. Give me a piece of acetate. This is a piece of overhead transparency, so pretty sturdy acetate. Because what I'm assuming is that when I do it like this, the top layer of the paste will get stuck to this. If I go over this with a paper towel, I risk that I smear this like slime which I got from mixing the spray and the paste all over the place, and then I can't get it off anymore. This is the perfect piece of brunch. Here, the paste is already pretty dry, and it gives this cool torn look. But how to get the color back here? Oh no! Ah! Oh no! Okay, that was too much. Hopefully Tim will not watch this. Oh my goodness. I mean, what is this? This looks, but it looks somehow really interesting. And we can now also remove the sprays from these areas we did with the other stencil. And here we got exactly what I was hoping for. And it's even cooler than what I expected, because we can see it here on the red areas as well. That is something I really, really like. And to be honest, this here, this is perfection. But how the heck can we get something like this or even this more controlled and on purpose? And where is this effect with the white stuff gone? That is probably also because I have dried it, and now it has dried on here. It has dried on, it's like embedded in the paste, and that's why we can't see it. And that was not so clever. That was not so clever, but that is also something we have learned now, that we can't do it like that. If we would have done this offset thing with the method we did here, meaning dry the paste before we spray, then it would have worked. Then we would have had it like here, but bigger, more visible. We can see it a little bit there, but that was, to be honest, not so clever. But what I don't like is, and that is because of this weird paper, that it turned out so neon yellow there. That is from the browns. I think Scotch Timber made this on that paper. So I'm just thinking which spray stain, because that is translucent, could I spray on here to get rid of these areas? Let's try fossilized amber. Oh, yes, 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 yes. And let's then remove the yellow from the paste. Okay. What did we learn from this? So I would say this is definitely the safest way to do this technique, that's for sure. I really like how this came out, even if this is absolutely uncontrollable, and you know, this where I ripped off the paper, it was not planned, obviously, but the effects on here are really cool, and I could imagine to cut this down into pieces and make several different cards from that. You know, choose like portions which look good, cut that down, and then put that to a card that would look, I think, really, really cool. But even this whole thing, perhaps cut in half, like so, and then use that as a belly band or so in a junk journal. That would look really, really nice. The same for this. This is, when I see the whole thing, too orange somehow. It is not interesting enough somehow, because it's this weird orange we got, and the brown compared to this, where we have all of these nice colors, and also here there's a bigger variety of colors. I like that better. But for a really you know, monochrome thing or so, this would perhaps also be good. What I really like about this are these little dots we got from the beads. I will definitely try something with that technique in the future somehow. Perhaps we can get that a little bit more under control, what happened there with these little dots. That is really interesting. I would say, if you see someone doing a technique, try it first, if you can, if you have the same materials, exactly like the person has shown it, because then you have a success on your table. Because if you don't like these, because I'm so sorry, if you don't do it exactly like the person has shown it, then you don't have something which is a success, because you haven't done it. Yeah, but if then your own pieces where you tried the opposite or something different end as a fail, then you don't have a successful experience, and that is not so good, I would say. Even if I wouldn't like these at all, or if everything went wrong here, I would still have this as a piece where I can say, okay, this was a success, I can use that for something, I like this. Even if these were complete fails, I would have this. And I find that very important for an experimental process like this was. That's it for today. See you the next time. And don't forget to drink your junk journal medicine, okay? Bye.